everyone, and welcome back to Haunted Hearsay. I'm Caroline. I'm up in the wilds of Donegal as usual. I'm joined with Ben down in Dublin. How are you, Ben?
I'm great, thank you. The weather is stunning here today.
Is it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we didn't get the weekend you got though. So,
No, and we're still having it too.
yeah,
It's raining out there. I'm still waiting on this heat wave that they keep telling us. I mean, it's
yeah.
warm, don't get me wrong, it is warm. But yeah, we had a couple of weeks off there, a little hiatus, and it was good to sort of gather some info. So, very quickly, I was in at Crawley Factory today. I was in Dunlow and I called into Crawley Factory and I managed to get a quick word with one of the managers there, Sean, and very kindly showed me around the place and was telling me about the incident with the lights going on, the sensor going off, and the guards calling him. It was him that was came down. So he took me round to where the sensor was, which is above one of the back doors. And I mean, even reaching up, you couldn't reach it, that kind of way. He says the only way you could set that sensor off is if somebody was up above, going past the sensor, or if someone had opened the door. So when he arrived, he expected the door to be opened or one of the doors to be open, and that was it. And so then he thought the doors weren't open, there was nothing open, and the lights had come on. So he thought maybe there's a bird had got right. So he searched the place. No, there was no bird and no explanation as to why the lights came on. And they came on, and as he said, it was 1:30. And now there's not definite that that's when the soldier was shot, but it's believed. But it was 100 years to the day.
Oh,
It was
that's
100 years to the
interesting.
day. So he thinks, yeah, it probably was. So very quickly, we did talk about Crawley Factory before, and we are haunted hearsay, not haunted facts. So we didn't actually have all our facts right in that.
Yeah.
I said he'd been shot by a local, but it's the other way about. He was actually shot by his own men. It was an accidental shooting. They thought he was a local. But I got speaking to Joe, one of the owners, and he knows the whole history, and he's very kindly agreed to come on and do a Zoom with us at some time. I'll
Brilliant.
need to nail him down on it, but we will have him. So we'll get him to come on and tell the whole story, and he can give us all the background as well.
Looking
So we'll
forward
look
to it.
forward to doing that.
Yeah.
So what about you? What did you do with your 2 weeks?
Oh, not a lot really. Just recuperated. Did a bit of research on bits and bobs. Really took it easy because I mean, there's been a few things in the last few weeks that have been, uh, I guess, difficult. And the reason why we took a few weeks off was for sensitivity reasons for various things. We won't go into any details, but we just thought it was a better idea not to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, between the two of us, we've had a bit of a shaky few weeks, but
It's been very sad. I mean, it's not even something affecting me directly. It's
Yeah.
sort of indirectly, but it's not just me. It's like this parish, the next parish over, the next parish over.
Yeah.
There's been so many different things. Very sad few weeks here, and so many different things that have happened, and it seem to have happened all at once. Now I have heard people blaming it in this, what do you call it, Mercury or
Oh, yeah, in retrograde.
yeah.
Well, I mean, there might be something to be said for that. You never
There
know.
might be. I don't know because I think people are noticing it more this. I don't know an awful lot about astrology.
Yeah.
I've never really, I think it's a bit too general. That's not to say I just don't know a lot about it.
It's also easy. It's very easy to say, oh, it's Mercury in retrograde or whatever.
Well, we do know the moon affects a lot of people.
Yeah.
That affects the whole planet.
And the
So
time.
it's very possible that is the reason there's been an awful lot of I don't know. But we kind of steered away from it. But I did tell you that I was doing the same. I was doing a bit of research and things. And it was something that I posted a few weeks back about a Jesuit priest that survived the Hiroshima bomb.
Yes.
Within a mile of the actual blast site. And someone just basically, that's bullshit. Now, I had seen this before a couple of years ago, and I had reposted. So I said, that's not true. That didn't happen. That's all rubbish. And I went, oh, okay, that's fine. Didn't do it. This time I thought, no, I'm going to do my homework. So I did. But if you go in and just Google like either Nagasaki or Hiroshima, there's nothing comes up about it. They do mention the buildings that were Japanese that survived. Yeah. There was a dome that was only like within half a mile of the blast site has survived. Other buildings, the gable ends. There were 13 survivors along with this Jesuit priest.
Okay.
That were all within a mile of the actual blast site. but he's the only one that went on and lived a further 30 years without any illness or
Disease.
side effects. The other 12 died in subsequent 12 to 13 years of various cancers.
Mm.
But it was through looking at this to prove a point with this, and sort of, I was really genuinely surprised that there had been any other survivors. I mean, between the two cities that were blown apart by these awful bombs, there was 220,000 people killed
Mm-hmm.
between the two cities, and I believe it was 170,000 wiped out in the one blast in Hiroshima.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the men, women, anyway, we're not going to go into the whys or the rights and wrongs.
Politics of it, yeah.
We know it's wrong. It's as simple as that. But again, we're not going into that. But what I did discover when I was reading it, and I found it very fascinating, on the buildings that survived, the dome seems to have survived quite intact. Obviously, windows and things like that were broken. How that's the case, we don't know. But there was gable ends of buildings, mean a wall of a building. But what they did find, and they've actually built memorials around it now in Japan, was these things called the shadows, and it's the shadow people. And what it is, it's the remains of the people that were either in these buildings or standing beside these buildings, and all that remains of them is this black shadow on the wall, but it's like an outline of them.
Yeah, that's
pretty spooky.
Yeah,
but they have several places, and they've made their memorials now to the Hiroshima bomb and the Nagasaki bomb. There are memorials to them, and people do pilgrimages to them, etc.
Yeah.
But I thought I'd like to just, I mean, 170,000 people dying within 5 minutes, and nearly all at once. That's as tumultuous and as, what's the word, traumatic as you could get.
Yeah.
And they say that people that die in a traumatic situation never find rest.
Yeah.
I wonder, is this the case?
Oh, and I also would be interested to know what today in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, how people feel about ghosts and spirits and afterlife, if whether there's more of a, do they think they are spending their day-to-day
It would be very interesting. They're definitely, the fact that they've preserved anywhere they've found these shadows, instead of, knocking the rest of the building down, and they've preserved it in memory of these people. But when you think so many people lost their lives so traumatically all at once, there has to be some sort of spiritual, in the whole city, in both of them, Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
Yeah. I've just had a quick look here again, and there is an exhibition at the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum called Human Shadow Etched in Stone, and it's thought to be the residue of a person who is sitting at the entrance of Hiroshima Bank, basically.
That's the Dome building, I think.
Yeah, Sumitomo Bank, when the atomic bomb was dropped. So, also known as the Human Shadow of Death. It's kind of morbid name for it, but yeah,
that's exactly what it was.
Interesting. That's fascinating. Yeah.
I came across, I'd never heard that before. And I remember going back very briefly to the mine that went off down in Ballamanas. That was a £500 mine, which compared to the bomb that was dropped in Hiroshima, nothing. But still, obviously devastating. But there was one fellow who was the closest to it, had been sitting on a rock smoking a cigarette, who, when they came to him, was still sitting on the rock with cigarette almost burned out. Well, the cigarette had obviously burned out, but all his clothes had been burned off him, blown off him. But it was like it hit him that quickly that it was like everything around him, clothes, skin, whatever, blown off him. Yeah, still kind of, he was. So I have heard of something like that before. But I suppose it only made sense that there had to be people.
To be brutally honest, I think I'd rather go in a flash of light and not know what was happening.
Yes, absolutely. I would. Obviously, these people went that quickly.
Yeah.
But it is a traumatic passing.
Sure.
And you're not talking one or two. You're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of people on the one side.
Or I guess if they don't know that they're dead, do you know, that kind of thing? Where, have you ever seen the movie Ghost?
Yes.
Yeah, I actually love Ghost.
You know, it's a good film, and I loved that as well. But I also, it's sorry, very
Oh,
bad.
yeah, go.
If you actually go online, the Japanese are unbelievably into paranormal.
Yeah,
And I'd say, on average, from what I can gather, 80% of the people believe.
yeah,
But I wonder, is there a connection? Is it because of these?
maybe.
Maybe they have had just far too many experiences in these two cities, and so the whole country is like, we know there's ghosts
They
there.
also have a very mature horror movie industry,
Mm.
which would signify that culturally there's like horror movies are always sort of a reflection on society, I think.
Yes, definitely. And I mean, and with them, it's like they're quite a pragmatic people.
Mm.
So when they say something, I don't think it's speculation. I mean, it's like they do the homework and things.
And they don't, they're considered in their speech and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought it was very interesting, and I thought it would bring me on to the another subject that I really wanted to cover,
Mhm.
because I think it's anyone I've ever spoke to that has lost someone, it's
Mm.
the dream that you get after you lose someone. And anyone I know that's lost someone has had the dream. And it's not the one, it's the one where that person, you see the person for the last time in the dream, whether it's at a distance or whether they come and speak to you. It wasn't my experience that they came and spoke to me, but it's the dream.
Hmm.
And nearly everyone gets it. And I've noticed now in um, certain sites and things like that, a lot of people that would be empaths, etc., would claim that it's something that happens in the first 3 months after someone passes.
Hmm.
I don't know that there's a time limit. I don't know, was it
Yeah.
months or more?
Well,
I'm just, yeah, I'm curious as to why that happens.
mhm. Well, we were speaking about this briefly the other day, and I was looking into various things, and I went down this sort of rabbit hole of watching this guy who compared dreams and astral projection and ghosts. He drew a common denominator between the three of those things, um, and basically, what he was saying was that when you sleep, you are essentially your astral self, and you're the best part of yourself. You're the most positive part of yourself. You're the most open part of yourself. And then, unfortunately, when you wake up, the reason why you don't remember a lot of dreams is because that's a mechanism to prevent you from hating the kind of the reality that we live in that isn't our best self and stuff. I
I
don't
can
know.
understand that, but I mean, the dream, I think, is something different. I've had dreams that I thought were precognitive and turned out they were, and I've
Mm-hmm,
had I lived through a phase in my 20s where I had night terrors.
mm-hmm.
I've gone, I mean, I've spent a long time analyzing dreams for myself and my own benefit.
Sure, yeah.
But when I
It's
say the dream,
different.
I remember, like, with my father's case, God rest his soul, and his was a traumatic death,
Mm-hmm.
and he was only young. He was only 42. And I remember it was a few months, several months. I can't say, was it 3 months or was it, it was a few months. And the dream was so real. And I could tell you exactly where I was. It was outside the school wall at the Key Road School and the old National School in Dunlow. And it was as if I was coming from Mahery. And I seen my father across the road up towards the old Dole office. And I shouted, "What are you doing? Why did you let everyone think you died?" This is in the dream. And I tried to catch up with him. And he just kind of waved and carried on. And as he walked further up, the closer I got to him, the more people that started to come in between us.
Yeah.
So that the closer I got to him, I wasn't getting any closer to him at all. But all of a sudden, all these people were in front of me. So, like, the more I tried to get near him, more people were in front of
Mm-hmm.
me. I don't know, was that a subconscious level that I was trying to reach him and that it wasn't my time to go? And when I reach him, there'll be nobody in front of me, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it was very significant. Now, that was my part of it. I know that my sisters had a dream when my father came to him. It wasn't the same for all of us. We all had a different,
Yeah,
it was, we all had the dream, but it wasn't the same dream.
yeah.
And I've talked to other people since, and it's like, yes, they had the dream as well, where it's almost like they get to say the goodbye that they didn't, but it's in a dream.
Yeah, I
Or
did.
that they know he's at rest, but it's in a dream.
I've also heard of people when they are passing away themselves that um so it's back to this kind of, remember the John Cleese interview?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So the university, God, I'm so bad at my memory as well.
Yeah, am I rubbing off on you now?
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, basically there's over 50 years of research in past lives, and also ghosts, and also various things like that. And one of the things that the experiences that are scientifically recorded by this university quite commonly is when people are actually passing away themselves, that whether they might be either just incapacitated from being very ill, or it could be something like dementia or something like that, that they get this sort of 15-20 minutes of clarity before they die, or they also start to see their loved ones on the other side.
Yes, I have heard that.
And I think that's fascinating. Well, one, I was initially, and I mentioned it previously, because of the moment of clarity thing, but actually it's interesting, the visitation of the spirit world, just kind of.
Yeah, it's all, but now, I mean, I'm not saying everybody gets this, but everyone I've spoke to who's had the dream.
I mean, I've never had it, but I've never lost someone that, other than grandparents, that obviously I love dearly. But
Did you ever have a dream subsequently after them where you saw
oh,
them?
I predicted my grandfather's death the night he died through a dream. I was 15 and I was in Donegal, and I dreamt.
You were 15?
Pardon me?
You working for me that time?
Yeah, I was. I had to leave Donegal and go back to Dublin, obviously, because of the death. But my grandfather was from Donegal, and anyway, he passed away. But in my dream, he was alive in a coffin, and we went to the church. Sort of, it was, I guess it was after the wake, bringing the coffin to the church or whatever, and we were it was in a horse and cart, which is crazy because it feels very Victorian or something.
Yes.
And then when we got to the church, it was open casket, but he wasn't dead, he was lying there.
That's what I mean about the dream. In the dream, it's not like you're dreaming about somebody who's dead. You're dreaming about somebody who's dead, but in the dream they're alive.
Yeah.
They come to you, and it's weird. I just know that it's a dream that lots of people have get, and it gives you a sense of, it's like, well, they have passed on, but it's almost like them letting you know, I'm okay.
It was weird because I was woken up to be told that my grandfather had passed away, because we had to leave and go back to Dublin, and I must ask my parents if they remember if I said anything after, because I knew. They told me, and I woke up and I was like, oh, I know. I had just had a dream. And I sort of put it in the back of my head as maybe a subconscious thing, maybe because I knew he was kind of sick. But then I didn't know he was going to die. He'd been sick for a while. He hasn't.
I had the same dream about my father. And my father was only 42, and I'd only come home the night before. I literally had only come home the night before, and I had the dream that night, and I had literally was woke out of my sleep, and I was laughing because I thought, God, it was a big crowd at his funeral. If he ever kicks the bucket, he knows lots of people, and that it was in Annigra. And when I came down to the door, the guard was standing at the door.
I know.
And when he told me what happened, my first reaction was to laugh. I went, away you go. I'm only after dreaming that he was buried in Annigra. And the guard, the poor fellow, didn't know what way to look. His face was beetroot. He's like, I'm hardly coming to the door to joke about something like this, And it was very, very strange, but it was very surreal. But that's not the dream I'm talking. The one I'm talking about is the one that comes after they've gone.
Yes.
It's almost like I think nearly everyone I know has had it, where they see them one more time, but it's one of those dreams. It's not, I think it was him that was in the dream. You dream about people sometimes, but they look differently, but you know who they are. This is as clear. This is pure clarity. You know exactly who it is. You can see them as if they're living and breathing in front of you. In my case, I couldn't reach him, and every time I tried to reach him, he would get that wee bit. Someone else would get in the middle between us. But there was some sort of, I did believe in the afterlife anyway. But I was just wondering what it is. I mean, is there a rational explanation for that dream? I mean, let's face it, we can find a rational explanation for everything. Doesn't mean that it's real or it's happened. I prefer to think that it's some way of them saying goodbye or just to let us know we're okay,
Yeah, yeah,
we're
yeah.
okay. It's I don't know, it's a strange thing, which leads me on to my next thing. See the people now, and I do believe in the afterlife. I don't know how I feel about reincarnation. I feel like I have been here before and I've gone through all that. But the people, it's like, oh, I'm watching over you now forever. At what point do they become reincarnated? Because you think they're going to be very busy if they're alive, trying to watch over somebody from a previous life.
Yeah. Or like I killed a moth yesterday, and I developed a moth problem in my house. It's not too bad. I've had a bad one in the past in another house. So, but I killed a moth yesterday, and I felt a bit bad about it because I couldn't let it out of the house, and I needed to kill it because
Why couldn't you let it out?
it was in the middle of the night, and
Oh, right,
it
okay.
was just like I'm just killing this thing, and it was a small.
See the wee butterflies I have stuck on my window? They're actually there's a thing that stops for flies and
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
moths coming into the house when you have your window open. There's something comes off it. You can
Yeah,
buy
there's
quite
yeah. I need to get some of them. I
different
used to have
windows.
something like that, but
Yeah,
not in
as
this
opposed
house.
to, or citrus. I don't know if that affects moths. I know it affects flies.
Yeah, I'll check it out. But anyway, I was saying that I killed this moth, and then I was thinking, God, if reincarnation is real and you came back as a moth, you'd be pretty annoyed, wouldn't you? Like, I was kind of justified killing it because I was like, right, they only live for a few days anyway. I hope it's not a reincarnated, because I do feel guilty. It's like when I kill flies, and I know it sounds bad, but I eat meat, so I shouldn't. Like,
Well, do you know something? You're saying they only live for a few days anyway.
yeah.
Maybe time to them is not
That's
as very
true. A few
different.
days is eternity for them.
Yeah, because I mean, funny now, it was my eldest son Edward. We were talking, not that we talk all the time, obviously, but not that long ago, we were talking about characters from the Bible. And if you notice, in especially in the first Bible, the Old
Old
Testament,
Testament. Mm.
like people lived for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And I says, well, you've got to remember that time and dates as we know it now, it was only established around 60 AD.
Mm.
And it wasn't even sort of before Christ, it was after. Before that, everyone told time differently. So it could have been by the moon.
Yeah, they
So you were
couldn't
like
keep
so
time.
many moons old or so many seasons old. So
Mm.
as I said to him, it's very reasonable to think people that we have translated it that they've lived 960 years. That might have been 960 moons or
Mm.
960 seasons.
Yeah.
Still make them very old, but it's a much more believable and acceptable,
Mm-hmm.
because I did say, I mean, the time that as we know it now, an hour, a minute, they were all people sat down and said, well, that's what this is. We'll go by Gregorian time or we'll go by the sort of hour, there's
Mm-hmm.
different sort of calendars, different times, but everybody came to the one agreement round to sort of a couple of thousand years ago. But
Mm-hmm.
before that, no, there was no set,
Yeah,
even,
and like even
yeah,
the idea of clocks and watches, like they go out of time. So if you have them, obviously clocks before, I think it was before Christ.
sundials and things like that. They
So
literally
yeah,
went by, yeah,
that
it's
would be the
easy to
primitive
plan
version,
them.
exactly. So that would be more accurate actually than a mechanical watch when they were invented with the cogs, because firstly you had to wind them up so they'd slow down, and then the
But I
time.
mean, back in, I'm talking sort of like, at the beginning, it's sort of when you're still talking BC, or
Mhm.
maybe then right up to the first 100 years.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, there was no way other than the sundial to check, or
Yes,
the
exactly.
sky,
So,
or whatever, as you said, to
and as
actually.
for a calendar, like how long a month lasted or how long a week lasted, was interpreted differently by different people all over the world.
Yeah.
But it was then, I think it was Constance in 64 AD that established one calendar that we all ended up following and agreeing.
Hmm.
And people do chop and change down the century. So then somebody somewhere in their eagerness decided that the clocks would go forward an hour or back an
Oh
hour.
yeah.
You know,
Is that for agricultural reasons?
I really don't know. I can't understand. I mean, I really don't
I
understand.
think it was to give farmers an extra hour in the winter and or something.
I really don't know why. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But I was like, I mean, it was sort of, it made sense to Edward then when I says, well, that's, you know,
Mm.
how they sort of determined how long a year was isn't how we do it now.
I wonder how
And to
long.
them, a year would have meant nothing. To us, we understand a year's 12 months, you know,
Yeah, or it's
28
four
days
seasons,
a month.
or like
Exactly.
the pagan
In those
season.
times, you wouldn't have even been saying, "Oh, I'm so many." It's like I'm one moon old, or I'm one season
Mm.
old, I'm one, you know.
I
So
still know
time is,
people
yeah,
who do that on their birthdays. So,
yeah. No, I thought it was very interesting because it's like you get a lot of stories and people are, that's nonsense. You think, well, interpret it. You remember when these stories were written. An awful lot of them have been exaggerated. There is absolutely no doubt about that. We know that. I mean, if I was to hear a story from somebody, by the time I tell it to you, I'll tell it a little differently. By the time you tell it to someone else, you'll tell it, and it's the same story with all the basics that are all exactly the same.
mm.
But the story will change once.
Chinese whispers, isn't it?
Exactly, Chinese whispers, and you think of that. I mean, it's like the likes of the Bibles. I mean, they weren't written down till after 200 years after.
After, yeah.
And they weren't written down in one period. There was chapters sent to different monasteries, to different scribes. You'll write this part and you'll write this part. And then, you know, Constance gathered the ones that he thought were appropriate and worked for him. But there was an awful lot of speculation, even then,
Mm-hmm.
that he was using it for politics in Rome,
Yes.
because Christianity was growing.
And
Catholicism was growing. So a lot of people claim that he did it from a political standpoint
sure, yeah.
to
I mean,
gain favor.
I'm sure there'd be a lot to, if you asked an expert about about the Vatican, they tie a lot of the historical political context into why certain chapters are in the official Bible, and then why there's so many chapters that sit outside of that are kept in the Vatican secretly or whatever. So.
Well, we know that there's lots that are kept secret. We know that there are lots. We know that, I mean,
Dead Sea
a thousand
Scrolls.
years before the Vatican Library, you had the libraries of Alexandria that were going back for thousands of years beforehand, that had different interpretations of first man.
Mm-hmm.
The church, any scrolls that survived that particular time were dismissed as heresy and things like that. But I think it depended. It was the flavor, you know. As I say, maybe there was political. We don't know now. Obviously, it's so far ahead. But we know that nowadays people haven't changed that much. And you know, and I mean, there is always a political agenda when it comes to
Exactly,
leaders of a country or whatever, you know. Do you know what I would go back on, up at my mum's now. Recently, I was been spending a lot of time up there, and I was in with my future daughter-in-law, Sarah. We were having a wee clean around the house for my mum, and she'd been up on her own for an hour before I'd gone up to the house. This is last week. And when I went in, and she's not really one for believing in anything like this. And I've told you before, my mum's house is haunted. And she's quite, he goes, Mum, that doesn't scare me. Things like that don't bother me in the slightest. And funny, it doesn't bother me down here. We both feel the same way. We're probably related to anyone that's passed through here. But it was so strange that when I landed up, Sarah had the radio on. And she says, isn't it very strange when you're in here, you never feel alone?
Oh.
You always feel like there's people in. I says, actually, yes, we all feel that. But it was, she says, I couldn't believe it. She says, I don't think she actually did believe it until she experienced it herself.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
And she says, it's not a bad feeling. She says, I didn't feel uncomfortable. She says, but at no point in the last hour did I feel like I was in here alone.
Wow. That's
yeah.
Yeah. I must.
So
I mean, in your mom's house, I've only been in two rooms. So
I actually think we should put you up to the haunted room for a sleepover.
Next time,
or actually, we should put Anthony up. He'd be braver.
Put him.
You're not as brave as you'd like to think.
Oh, I'm not brave at all, Caroline. I'm a big one. I'll go along with things. Like I'll go to the scary places if like you're there.
I think one of you should do it, just to see if
Yeah.
anything
I
happens.
stayed in the big house on Rutland Island that's very, very haunted, the Hallfeld house. They have similar anecdotes, like big macho men that my friend's brother-in-law, he doesn't believe in any of that, and then he's had the life scared out of him one night and he insisted on sleeping in the sitting room on the sofa when he was given a perfectly good bedroom with,
Is that the one downstairs in the
in the
basement?
basement. Yeah, the spare rooms. I've slept down there too, but I didn't notice anything when I was sleeping. But actually, one time I was on. This is I don't know if this is a bit crude for this, but I was in the bathroom and I heard whistling, and I was with my friends who were upstairs. And bearing in mind, I was in a basement, and the stairs went over the bathroom, and they were wooden. So anyone coming down that stairs, you'd hear. And then there was a door downstairs that stays locked because it's like the wet room or where you keep your jackets and that kind of area. That was a double door, so no one came in there because you'd hear the two doors open and they were jammed. It's kind of windy island in the North Atlantic Sea, so wood swells and the doors get jammed and all that kind of stuff. So I was just really, to this day, I don't know who I heard whistling because it wasn't any of my friends who were upstairs, and nobody
We'll
came
just point out,
downstairs.
we know where we're talking about and where you're talking about, but for anyone watching, this house on Rutland Island is one of the oldest buildings on Rutland Island, but it was also the first licensed premises in Donegal.
Mm,
They had the first license for a pub in Donegal.
or pub, yeah.
And,
Post office, I believe, as well.
pardon?
Post office.
The post office was on Edenich.
Oh, right, okay.
The post office was on Edenich
Right, okay.
on Rolfs Island.
Not too far.
Yeah, that
Stone
was
throw away.
that was the postmaster's house.
Okay, I should
Mhm.
know that.
Yeah, you should know that.
And the other thing about that big house was that there was a violent history of, it was a pub, as you said, so there was
Mhm.
drink fights.
There was also the history when Nappertandy came in the answering,
Yes.
and the boat was towed in by Dennis John Teague's great 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 grandfather, and he towed the boat in as far as there. They lay siege to the island along with all his French crew, and there was only a handful of soldiers, I think, and so they arrested them. But everyone was held at the pub, and they were waiting in the pub. They waited in the pub. There was another gentleman that was supposed to join them on a ship, who had crashed off of, between Mayo and Sligo, and never made it as far as them. So that attempted sort of uprising was scuppered there and then at the time. Like,
17.
but yeah, that's where they were held. We don't. To be honest, now I know local historians, from what I gather, they held them there for the weekend, and they all went on the beer.
I heard that too, and I also have
Yeah,
the proclamation that was read by Napper Tandy on Rutland
yeah.
somewhere. I actually
Because
found.
I do remember that one of the women that came, there wasn't a big turnout in Burtonport because he spoke English, and a lot of the locals didn't have English at the time. Apparently, there was one woman that walked over from Runafast with her son because she'd heard about the call to arms, and she'd walked over with it, but she could understand English and she was able to translate. I remember giving you all the information I found years ago, but I thought that was a lovely story. This woman had come over, and basically not many people turned up, and it was some English fella or some English talking fella, a local, yeah, exactly. It was unusual at the time. So there was no, it's like, well, we're not starting an uprising today, we better go home. So it was very, I don't think there was anyone hurt during that siege that lasted a weekend.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I wonder if
So there's bound to have been things though that happened down the centuries, maybe, that we just haven't heard about, that were swept under the carpet.
well, it's not long until I'm up on the island and I'll have you over.
We're going to, yeah, fingers crossed now
Next
that
month,
Edmund and the family are there, and we get round to.
Oh, we'll have a look at the house,
Yeah, and we take a few pictures, hopefully, but hopefully they'll let us go in and do an EVP.
Oh yeah,
Wouldn't that be so cool?
that would be cool. Down in the basement.
Yeah, I think it would be really
I'm sure
cool.
I'll put it to him. I'll ask him because I actually meant to drop up and say hello because I missed him last year. So it'd be good to.
Well, I'm looking forward to getting out to Rutland Island because we're going to do a few different places to do EVPs.
Mm,
And I'm looking forward to doing that. But I think I would be keen to get out to Innisfree as well.
I'd love to.
So hopefully the next time that you go out to Rutland Island that Edmund will be there and we'll get a chance to get in and he won't mind, hopefully, and we'll get a chance to
Exactly,
go
yeah.
out to Innisfree. I can
Yeah.
think of a house or two that we can go in there and it would be
We'll
very interesting.
we'll go around the ruins on Rutland as well.
Yeah, we'll go around to the where the Screamers lived as well. We can
Yeah.
go
Oh
around, we
yeah.
can go around there.
Yeah.
It's been quite a long time. The last time I was there, it was quite overgrown. It was still livable in the houses, but they were
Yeah.
quite everything around it was quite overgrown.
We used to go to Innisfree to get some mussels, but then we felt bad about it, so we just started. Apparently, they started growing mussels on Rutland, so there's a spot on our island. We don't need to steal other
Other
stuff.
people's other people's muscles.
Yeah, no,
But
to
there
be
only
fair,
is one or two people ever on. I mean, Caroline Currid, one of the people that lives on Innisfree on a regular basis, and she's
yeah,
quite a character. So, well, the fun when we do go out, we'll get a chance to talk to her.
exactly, yeah.
Well, listen, we'll bring this to a conclusion tonight. So we'll have various people that look forward to getting on again. Brian will be happy. That's our friend in America, the writer.
Speaking, I don't know if you can see, but I know he's he's not from Massachusetts, but he wrote the book about it. So,
Yes.
I'm wearing my Salem, Massachusetts.
Oh, yes.
Probably backwards, but Salem.
Yeah, I've been flicking through his book, but what I've been using it as is an index. So I'll pick something and then I'll Google to
Oh,
see,
nice.
what
Yeah,
who's done what, and it's very informative. Like, I
yeah,
mean, he has
yeah.
such a catalogue of all the places that are haunted
It'd be
in
great if
America. Yeah, it is.
something
It's
like that
very
was done
impressive.
here.
So we'll look for. We will get him on again in the future. We'll get Regina on again in the future. We'll look forward to speaking to Joe about the Crawley factory and the history behind it, and the one thing that we all accept. But very quickly before we say goodbye, I seen a post yesterday on Facebook that I thought was absolutely fabulous. And it was, maybe you can post the picture just to show it. It was a girl, Sheila Friel, that had been doing background. She's a musician and came up and found this character, Tarla McSivinia, Tarla Sweeney, who was a great piper. Even they took him to New York, in fact.
And he was from Gidor as well.
He was from Gidor. I don't know who he was in Gidor. I really must look more into this. But the one thing that struck me was that he was acclaimed even when he went to New York as the Donegal fiddler, the Donegal piper.
Yeah.
He was the greatest piper ever heard, and he put it down to the fairies. He claimed that the fairies endowed him with the ability to play the pipes better than anyone had ever played before. But he also accused them of leading him astray at times as well. So I thought that I only seen like the small paragraph that she'd done, and I thought I absolutely love that. It so sounded like Robert Johnson in the Crossroads, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
But except like this guy, it was the fairies that endowed him with
selling your soul to the fairies.
Yeah, so I thought must, just before I had to mention it, and I thought must look more into that. Well, listen, it was great chatting as always. Everybody, anyone watching tonight, please like and subscribe. Thank you for everyone that gives me a wee bit of stories and a wee bit of insight. We're going to be doing a lot more out and about these days now that we can. And we'll look forward to bringing you more ghost stories. So from Donegal and from Dublin.
See you later.
Iho, folks. Good night.